Sixie, it's Mrs. Cardy here. Just wanted to say how much I'm missing you and hoping that you're all keeping well, keeping safe and enjoying the schoolwork that we're setting you. Just thought it'd be a lovely idea if we could finish reading Kensuke's Kingdom. Now we read this at the beginning of, started reading this at the beginning of last term. We haven't quite finished it. If you remember, it's called Kensuke's Kingdom. It's by the author Michael Morpurgo and it is published by Egmont Publishing House. I wonder whether you can remember where we got up to. Well, for those of you that can, that's brilliant. For those that you can't, then we were up to the part where Michael fell into the water and was stung by a jellyfish and Kensuke rescued him. I'm going to start reading at chapter 7. So, here we go. I smelt vinegar and thought I was at home. My father always brought us back fish and chips for supper on Fridays and he loved to soak his in vinegar. The whole house would stink of it all evening. I opened my eyes. It was dark enough to be evening, but I was not at home. I was in a cave, but not my cave. I could smell smoke too. I was lying on a sleeping mat covered in a sheet up to my chin. I tried to sit up and look around me, but I couldn't move. I tried to turn my neck. I couldn't. I could move nothing except my eyes. I could feel, though, my skin, my whole body throbbed with a searing pain, as if I had been scalded all over. I tried to call out, but could barely manage a whisper, and then I remembered the jellyfish. I remembered it all. Wonder if you know what a searing pain is. It's as though he's been scalded all over. If you think about it, if you've been scalded all over, you would be in real pain. So a searing pain is really intense pain, okay? The old man was bending over me. His hand soothed on my forehead. You better now, he said. My name, Kensuke. You better now. I wanted to ask after Stella. She answered for herself by sticking her cold nose in my ear. And if you can remember, Stella is Michael's dog. I do not know for how many days I lay there, drifting in and out of sleep. Only that whenever I woke, Kensuke was always there, sitting beside me. He rarely spoke, and I could not speak, but the silence between us said more than any words could. My enemy, my captor, had become my saviour. Who do you think he's talking about there? Well, he's talking about Kensuke, because to begin with, if you remember, he thought Kensuke was going to do him some harm, so that's why he called him his enemy, and his captor, somebody who's keeping him captive, not letting him escape from the island, has become his saviour. What do you think a saviour is? Yeah, you're right, somebody who's going to save him, okay? He would lift me to pour fruit juice or warm soup down my throat. He would sponge me down with cooling water. And when the pain was so bad that I cried out, he would hold me and sing me softly back to sleep. It was strange. When he sang to me, it was like an echo from my past, of my father's voice, perhaps. I didn't know. Slowly, the pain left me. Tenderly, he nursed me back to life. The day my fingers first moved was the very first time I ever saw him smile. You can imagine that Kensuke at that point is really, really relieved that Michael is getting better. Okay? When at last I was able to turn my neck, I would watch him as he came and went, as he busied himself around the cave. Stella would often come and lie beside me, her eyes following him too. Every day now I was able to see more of where I was. In comparison with my cave down by the beach, this place was vast. What do you think the word vast means? Yeah, really, really, really big. okay? So in comparison to his cave that he was living in, this is massive. Apart from the roof of vaulted rock above me, so that means it's really, really high, you would scarcely have known it was a cave. There was nothing rudimentary about it at all. And rudimentary is another hard word, that means basic. So there was nothing basic about it at all. It looked more like an open plan house than a cave. There was a kitchen, a sitting room, studio, bedroom, all in one space. He cooked over a small fire which smoked continuously at the back of the cave. Think about it, continuously means all the time. The smoke rising through a small hole high in the rocks above. A possible reason, I thought, why there were no mosquitoes to bother me. If you remember early on in the story, Michael was getting bitten, awfully bitten by mosquitoes, and what did Kensuke bring to him to stop it? Anybody remember? Yeah, you're right, he brought him a blanket, a cover, a sheet, so that he could go underneath, sleep underneath it, then the mosquitoes couldn't get to him, okay? There always seemed to be something hanging from the wooden tripod above the fire. Either a blackened pot of what looked and smelt like long strips of smoked fish. I could see the dark gleam of metal pots and pans lined up by the nearby wooden shelf. There was other shelves too, lined with tins and jars, dozens of them, of all shapes and sizes, and hanging beneath them, bunches of dried herbs and flowers. These he would often be mixing or pounding. It's really, really hard, banging hard, but I wasn't sure what for. Sometimes he would bring them over to me so that I could smell them. The cave house was sparsely furnished. Now, you know what sparsely means? Yeah, it means there's not much in there, okay? It's sparse, it's quite bare. To one side of the cave mouth stood a low wooden table, barely a foot off the ground, and here he kept his paintbrushes, always neatly laid out, and several more jars and bottles and saucers too. Kensuke lived and worked almost entirely near the mouth of the cave. Why do you think he would do that? Yep, probably because it was lighter, okay? At night he would roll out his sleeping mat across the cave from me, up against the far wall. I would wake in the early mornings sometimes and just watch him sleeping. He always lay on his back, wrapped in his sheet, and he never moved a muscle. Kensuke would spend many hours of every day kneeling at the table and painting. He painted on large shells, but much to my disappointment he never showed me what he had done. Indeed, he rarely seemed pleased with his work, for just as soon as he had finished, he would usually wash it off and start again. On the far side of the cave mouth was a long workbench, and hanging up above it an array of tools, saws, hammers, chisels, all sorts. And beyond the workbench were 3 large wooden chests in which he would frequently rummage around for a shell. What do you think you're doing if you're rummaging? It means you go in, you really trying to find something quickly. Perhaps, or a clean sheet. We had clean sheets every night. Inside the cave he wore a wraparound dressing gown, a kimono I later knew it to be. He kept the cave house immaculately clean. It's really clean, sweeping it down once a day at least. There was a large bowl of water just inside the cave mouth. Every time he came in, he would wash his feet and dry them before stepping inside. The floor was entirely covered with mats made of wooden rushes, like our sleeping mats, and everywhere, all around the cave, to head height and above, the walls were lined with bamboo. It was simple, but it was his home. There was no clutter. Everything had its place and its purpose. As I got better, Kensuke would go off and leave me on my own more and more, but thankfully never for too long. He returned later, very often singing with fish, perhaps fruit, coconuts or herbs, which he'd bring over to show me proudly. The orangutans would sometimes come with him, but only as far as the cave mouth. He'd peer in at me and at Stella, who always kept her distance from them. But only the young ones ever tried to venture in, and when Kensuke only had to clap at them, and they'd soon go scooting off. During those early days in the cave house, I so much wished we could talk. There were thousands of mysteries, 1,000 things that I wanted to know, but it still hurt me to talk. And besides, I felt quite happy with our silence, and he preferred it somehow. He seemed a very private person and content to be that way. Thank you, 6E, for listening. I'm going to leave it there. I want you to have a think about the questions that Michael would like to ask Kensuke. If you could put some questions on the blog, that'd be amazing. If you don't feel like going on the blog and you'd like to send me an email, brilliant, send it to 6E's class email address. That would be excellent. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Write them down in your book and you can show me them when we get back into school. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I don't know when, but soon there'll be the next part of that chapter on our blog. So brilliant. See you soon. Thanks, 6E. Bye.